Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I am the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain. I am also the host of the Blended podcast, which you can now find separately on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. And that is our newest conversation in diversity and inclusion. So definitely go and check it out. I am really excited to be here with you today, and we've got an exciting guest, and we're going to be talking all about leadership and supply chain and all sorts of things. So I can't wait to get started. But before we do, let's talk about what's happening over at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So this week's newest episode is with Transmetrix. They are a company out of Europe that are changing transport planning with optimization and AI. So go and check them out. We've got a great conversation all about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Mark came on the show, and one of the quotes that he said is there should always be someone involved, not only controlling and checking the machine, but bringing an empathetic view. And that was him talking about how we can bring humans and machines together. So go and check that out. We would love to hear your thoughts on that one. What else is happening? Well, last week I told you guys all about my newest course with LinkedIn Learning. That's right. I have just now released a course with LinkedIn Learning called The Fundamentals of Sustainable Supply Chains. I've been getting some amazing feedback on this. So go and check it out. It's under LinkedIn Learning. And if you just search my name, or if you search Fundamentals of Sustainable Supply Chains, you can find that as well. What else have we got? I was honored to be one of Peerless Women Leaders for 2021. And so they wrote an article about my journey and what's been going on. So I just want to send a big shout out to Perceptive and thank them very much for honoring me with this article. If you want to go and check that out, that's under my posts on LinkedIn. What else is happening? We've got some events coming up. So one of the events that I don't show in here is that I'm going to be a panelist with Timothy Dooner and Pam from Connective next week alongside the New York Supply Chain Meetup. And that is happening next Thursday at 11 a.m. I don't have the graphic yet, but I will get that. And I promise you, I will let you guys all know when that's going to be, or at least give you a registration link. We've also got some amazing events coming up. So this Wednesday, we have the launch of our newest live show with Topple. It's called Purpose, Planet, Profit with Topple. And they're going to be talking about sustainability and blockchain and what that means for your business. It's going to happen every third Wednesday of the month at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 45 minutes. So make sure that you come back to the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page, Twitter page, YouTube page, and Facebook page to come and check that out as well. It's happening this Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Next Thursday, we've got a LinkedIn Live happening with Easy Mile called Real Automation for Real Supply Chains. AJ is going to put the link for you to be able to attend this. We are going to be talking about autonomous vehicles and how you can utilize that in supply chain and in your supply chain strategy. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that one. What else have we got? I'm also going to be at, that's happening next week too. So I am going to be running the Woman in Supply Chain, their diversity networking event. And it's actually going to be a wine tasting as well at their user conference called Flow. And that is happening next Wednesday afternoon. So if you want to be part of that, we've got all the registration links under this event post that AJ will post the link for in the comments as well. And then, of course, we've got Manifest that is happening in January. We've also got some free merch that we're giving out. As long as you are the one that is engaging with us on social media and engaging with us during our live shows, you could actually win our Let's Talk Supply Chain mug that you see here. Imtiaz was our winner last month, and I can't wait to see who's going to be the winner this month as well. We're also giving away something for free over on Instagram. So if you go to the Let's Talk Supply Chain Instagram and you type in and you DM LTSC to us, then you will get our free offering as well. So go ahead and do that. What else have we got? I don't know what else we've got before I bring up our guest. Let me just see here. I think it's time to bring up our guest. I have talked way too much for this morning. So let's bring Jim up to the show. Good morning, Jim.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing? All the way from Austin, Texas.
Yeah, living the dream in Austin. It's a great place to be.
Awesome. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Certainly involved in a great company here in Austin called Source Day, and our mission is really serving manufacturers, distributors, and retailers, and really helping them with supply chain performance. We just live to serve these folks and in manufacturing. It's been difficult in the pandemic, but at the same time a blessing just to be able to help people with things like automation and helping them with procurement and logistics and all the things that we do here at Source Day. And I love the sign behind you, collaboration is the future of business, because that is what we do, is we collaborate. We help buyers and suppliers meet the demands of their customers, right? So it's a great time. It's a great space to be in, and I've been doing it for a long time. So lots of experience and procure to pay and quote to cash and all the things that matter for big manufacturers and distributors today.
I love that. And that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy working with you and the team at Source Day, is because we really, resonate and around collaboration. And collaboration, I say this all the time. It's even in my LinkedIn learning course that collaboration is the future of business. And I truly, truly believe that. I want to give a good morning to Joseph and Rhonda over on my personal LinkedIn as well. We are just getting started and we've got a lot going on today and a lot to talk about. So let's kick it off with our question of the week. So last week we ran a poll, and the poll was, what does the abbreviation for BOL or B/L mean in the freight forwarding environment? This one was a fun one, and we had a lot of people. Obviously, you can see we had 1,960 votes. We had 18 comments and 57 reactions. Out of those votes, 89% of you knew that it was bill of lading, which is great because obviously being in supply chain, we do need to know what that means. 7% said bill of landing, 4% said bill of loading, and 0% said boatload. But I can tell you most of the comments for this particular post was around boatload and how they thought that was a really, really funny option. Jim, what do you think about this? I know freight forwarding is not necessarily in your background, but did you know
Well, yeah,
that it means bill of lading?
I did know that, but boat loading is pretty good because the original BOL term was all around sea carrier shipping, and now it's everything, right? A bill of lading can be from any type of transportation. So that's great. I love the boatload.
The boatload, right? I loved it too. I think we made a couple of people's day with that. All right. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about today is my thoughts and coffee post. So I saw this, and I know I've had a lot of messages from people around this because I think this one's making the rounds on Instagram. And it was a post that I saw on somebody else's Instagram. And I thought it was fitting because obviously the kids are just going back to school. I don't know about you, but on the news, I've heard about a lot of students being anxious going back to school, right? Anxious seeing their friends and family, or sorry, their friends, and just getting back into the day-to-day grind, being on Zoom for the last school year. And this really, resonated with me because I wasn't the best student. I mean, I was in some areas, and in some cases I was not. This post, I did talk about how I did all of my courses in French. So I took French immersion from a very young age, and I did all of my courses in French until grade 11. And in grade 11, they actually changed all of my courses to English. So for most of my schooling, I learned math and science in French. And so when they turned it into English, I actually had no idea what they were talking about because I had learned all of the terms in French for so long that it actually ruined a lot of my chances in post-secondary from a math and a science perspective. It's a good thing that those were not my subjects anyways, but it ruined a lot of things. But it also makes us realize that sitting in that classroom, there's an artist, there's an entrepreneur, there's a musician. And I think that for me, I'd like to see more holistic schooling where we take a look at the person and what they like to do and what they're good at, what their weaknesses are, help them with those weaknesses a little bit more. And so that's sort of where I sit on this, but I thought it was a really great post. Jim, what do you think? You've got kids and grandkids, and I'm sure you've been going through all of this in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, my heart goes out to moms and dads that have had to get through this last year with, homeschooling and Zooming. And I can't even imagine. I've watched my kids go through it with the grandkids. I'm thankful that they're able to get back into school. The other thing I'd love to see come back is just the trades, being able to learn a trade in school. When I grew up in school, there was shop and all kinds of things that I could take to learn trades in case I didn't want to have a formal education or I didn't want to get into computer science, right? And I think bringing that back is great. And I've seen in our local school system in Texas, we're doing a lot of that. So, but yeah, best to the parents, especially those that are trying to run global supply chains and working 24/7 and having kids at home. I've seen it with our employees. I've seen it with our customers. It's been such a challenge. So I'm thankful that we're able to get back into school this year.
Yeah, me too. And you're not the only person that said that about the trades. I had some people in the comments also talk about the trades. And I can tell you, when I was in school, we did metalwork, we did woodworking, we did cooking, which I was really, really horrible at.
Well, the guys took cooking to be with the girls, right? So I did the cooking class too, Sarah.
Well, so actually metalworking was one of my favorite. And woodworking, we made a birdhouse, and I was pretty good at that too. But then they also did sewing, and I had to make a pair of boxer shorts, and I don't think they lasted a couple of days because I am not your typical girl with cooking and sewing. Let's just put it that way.
Love it. That's great.
So I do. Yeah, and I do think that we should bring that back because at the end of the day, we also need a lot of trades, right? There's a lot of trades that we need in our life right now that some people are retiring from, and we don't have anybody that's coming up behind them to really take that over.
Spot on. I mean, especially for manufacturers, right? I mean, there is so much that is missing in the manufacturing world and in the next generation, as I call it. We're seeing lots of folks in our business that are younger coming out of college, including our CEO co-founder with a supply chain degree, which is pretty exciting that now colleges and universities are really trying to train folks on the white collar professional side, but the blue collar side is still needing, right? That the training and the tools and all of it that goes with making products that we all consume. So
absolutely. Well, hopefully they can bring that back. I think one of the things that we did in gym was line dancing. So they taught us how to line dance in gym.
We do that. We do that in Texas all the time. So that's what we do.
So I think after that, I probably should have moved to Texas because I don't know. I'm a Canadian that learned how to line dance in gym.
Well, I did notice you're wearing the Source Day green today, so you can come here anytime. I'm going to get all kinds of heck that you're in Source Day green and I'm wearing white. It's not going to go well with the team as I get out of this room today. So thank you for that.
Okay. If we're going to be honest with the audience, we both showed up in white with polka dots this morning.
We did.
And because of the lighting, it didn't work for me. So I went and changed into the Source Day green. But we definitely showed up twinning this morning.
Well, I do have my Source Day green pen team, so I got something here. So
awesome. All right, let's get into the articles now. What are we talking about today? So the first article that we are talking about today comes from Source Day, and one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight this article is because supplier scorecards and your relationship between yourselves and your suppliers are super, super important to any successful supply chain. It really starts with this. And when I first started this podcast, back when it was Two Babes Talk Supply Chain, I had William from Cascade come on the show, and he was so passionate about supplier scorecards and the difference that it made to him and what he did at Cascade in supply chain. And so he actually shared the manual version that he had created, and we were able to get it into a lot of supply chainers' hands. But now, obviously, a couple of years later, technology is making all of the difference. And one of the interesting things that I took from this article was a stat that you guys have put together. I think it was from Hackett Group.
Yeah, the
It's
Hackett
down
Group.
here
Yep,
anyways, but I think it's from Hackett
Hackett
Group.
Group.
And it says 90% of orders must be a perfect order to maintain customer happiness. So let me just think about that one for a minute, because 90% perfect order. That's
Yep.
how you're going to maintain your customers. That's how you're going to get return customers. That's how you're going to keep them happy. So how do we do that? So Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about this article and why you guys put it together, why it's so important? But the one thing that I do want to say about this article too is that there's some really good tangible takeaways here too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we focus on is helping our customers, our manufacturers, distributors get to the perfect order, right? And 90% is even a low watermark, quite frankly, right? We strive to get, 95, 100% on time and full for our customers. That's really what they're looking for, is on time and full delivery. And if you get a perfect order, then guess what? You also get a clean invoice and are able to, auto voucher and be touchless on the invoice side. So it carries through all of the supply chain. But back to what we talked about earlier with collaboration, it starts with collaboration. Without that collaboration, like your gentleman from Cascade using a spreadsheet and an email, right, to communicate with his suppliers, that's really what SourceDay was invented to do, was get rid of email and spreadsheets and try to do automation. And when you talk about scorecarding, having qualitative data and quantitative data, quantitative being probably the most important one, right? Having those KPIs, whether it's responsiveness, on time, quality, whatever those 3 or 4 key things are, they tie back to, from the demand signal that comes out of the planning engine all the way through, getting receipt of the product and being able to collaborate on that purchase order, get it perfect. Once that purchase order is perfect, right, we get through the exceptions, then you've got the perfect order.
Yeah. And, obviously in a time where we've been talking about supply chain risk a lot in the last 18 months, and how are we going to minimize that risk? This really is a way to be able to do that fairly easily, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something that you can implement today that can help you minimize that risk fairly easily. I mean, better than actually looking at different suppliers in different locations. I mean, that's some heavy lifting, but this is something that you can implement fairly easily.
It is. It's quick to implement, but more importantly, if you think about your supply chain, you've got your ERP system, you've got your buyers and your planners and your operations people internal to the company. Your biggest asset are those suppliers, right? Where am I going to get my parts? And they sit outside your ecosystem. They have no visibility until you send that email or that spreadsheet. They're clueless. So bringing them into a portal that is bi-directional, that allows them to have real-time access into your ecosystem, and vice versa, then you can start to grade them and get great scores and see who's being responsive, figure out where you want at the very first mile on sourcing, right? I know we're talking a little bit about sourcing, but from sourcing to demand planning to actually, getting the purchase order and getting the product out the door on time and full is key. And it takes automation. It's what we do.
Well, yeah. And I mean, what they're talking about in that article too is that manual scorecards, obviously, there can be a lot of mistakes and things like that. And when it comes to suppliers and really taking a look at what they're doing for you is really, really important, because if you make any mistakes with that, you could be thinking that you need to go and look for another supplier, and maybe it's just a breakdown in communication. And so I think really upping the game and turning that into technology is really going to make it a competitive advantage. And I think, I really like what you said around quantitative and qualitative data, because I talk about that in my LinkedIn learning course about how important that is to also sustainability. And so, I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about the different types of data that we need to make sure that we're staying competitive and staying out in front from a variety of different perspectives in our supply chains.
Yeah, and being able to have a place where there's a system of record, right? If right now folks would have had this, had this scorecarding going for the last couple of years, once we hit the pandemic, they would have been able to start to sort, right? Who are my best suppliers? What's my best source? How do I get to, a country like Vietnam that's completely shut down right now? What are my other suppliers, and where are they located, and all of those things that come out of, accurate scorecarding.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I love that. I want to say hi to Kadar over on my personal LinkedIn page. Audrey has just joined us as well. She's joining us for the last 15 minutes. So let's get to our second article. Now, this one was fun for me. I really like Under Armour. My nephew loves Under Armour. Every time I see him, he's like dressed head to toe in Under Armour. He's only 10 and he's got like fashion style that's happening. But one of the things that I thought was interesting from this article is that Under Armour is using their sourcing strategy as a competitive advantage. Now, this is not something that brands are coming out and saying every single day. And so I think it's important to note that we've been talking about supply chain being a competitive strategy. Now they're talking about the platforms that they use in sourcing, in PO management, in supply chain that is really creating that competitive advantage. And that's kind of what we were talking about with the supplier scorecard and why it's so important to get that from a manual stage into technology based. But I think this takes it even that much further, is that brands are looking at those platforms to make them or to give them that competitive advantage over other retailers. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I think diversification in the sourcing is very key. We have a partner, Coupa, as well as ourselves, that try to do a good job to help our manufacturers find key sources. And this article a month ago, when you shared this article with me from a month ago, Vietnam was still open and Under Armour was still able to get some product. Right now, it's a month later, it's completely shut down. Right, yeah. The whole country is down. So Under Armour in particular has now got to go. I think it was 30% of their sourcing came out of Vietnam. They've got to find an alternate source. So finding those alternate sources that you can count on, whether you used them in the past or not, is key to what technology can bring you today.
Well, and I think one of the important points that you brought up when we were talking about the last article is also PO management, right? So when we look at Under Armour taking a look at different places, so in this article, they talk about spreading their sourcing in different locales, and what they want to have is 15 to 20% dependency in one country.
Yeah.
And what that does is it increases, obviously, the amount of suppliers that they're dealing with on a regular basis. And so obviously, we were just talking about supplier scorecards. That comes in and is really, really important. But from a PO management, can you talk about how technology can really help with that? Because Under Armour is not the only one that's looking at spreading out their supplier base. And Under Armour is talking about not only Vietnam, Jordan, Europe, and Latin America. And so not only are you looking at outside of Southeast Asia, right? Because you're looking at Europe, you're looking at Latin America. There's different languages, there's different cultures. And so you've got to be able to have a specific platform and strategy for your suppliers to be able to communicate with you, because communication is really going to be key to organizing all of that and making sure that you've got that 90% perfect order.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things going on. In the past, prior to the pandemic, manufacturers might go out once a year and do a request for quote and try to look for new areas of sourcing. That's all out the door now. They've got to do it multiple times, maybe even a quarter, based upon the pandemic. But being able to have demand signals out of your planning engine to figure out, what purchase order do I need to cut, and where am I going to source, those materials from? And reading these supply chain dive articles, there's just company after company in Q3, Q4 missing right now, right? Because they can't find the source in particular. So just a tough environment to work in. But having visibility again and connecting to those suppliers through technology. Being able, we saw during COVID that the purchase order, the change rate coming out of an ERP went up from, an average of 52% as we see in normal times, all the way up into the 60, 70% spike.
Wow.
Of POs changing once they leave the ERP. So being able to plan around that and work exceptions around that, right? So our hope is with PO management, we automate much of that. So buyers and suppliers are just, automation is passing everything through, so they can focus on the hot items. What's the lead time going to be? Is something going to ship on time? And and just the pricing of containers and all the cargo things that we talked about, even with bill of lading to start the conversation, right? It all plays into it. And it's just, as their cost goes up, our costs go up as consumers. So trying to
Yeah.
help them sort through that is a big challenge.
Well, actually, it's interesting because I saw on the news this morning that it's not just supply chain challenges that are going to cause empty shelves or prices to go up. There's actually people that are stealing product before they actually get to the store, and this is happening more and more. And these people are taking the product and they're selling them on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that this was a thing. And again, this is another supply chain challenge because obviously they're being delivered on a truck and that truck is being robbed of the product. But I just can't believe how many different things supply chainers are even dealing with right now. And if they don't have the technology in place, I don't even know how they're doing it, to be perfectly honest. So
Yeah.
let's.
Well, the other big
Go ahead.
phenomenon that's happening, we've talked to customers just in the last month and a half, 2 months. This has come up in multiple manufacturers where they worked for years to reduce warehousing, reduce
Yeah.
safety stock, trust their suppliers to get there. Now it's a complete reverse. I'm going to build a bunch of warehouses. I'm going to get 18 months to 2 years worth of stock. Back to the sourcing problem. I don't know when, where there's going to be an impact. So it's amazing what it's done to the business of transformation.
Absolutely. And Audrey agrees with you there. So I just put that comment up there. Okay. So last article. This one is fun. And actually, I want to, before we move on, Peter says, heard yesterday in financial news, US inflation to be 5.4%. That is really high, guys. That's crazy. Crazy. All right. So this last article is talking about autonomous cargo ships. So you've heard me in the past on Thoughts and Coffee talk about the welfare of seafarers and how we really need to get behind seafarers because, especially during COVID, they were on vessels for 2 years without being able to see their family and not being able to get out into ports. Well, now there's a company in Norway that has created a cargo ship that's autonomous. And so they are actually looking to test this out, obviously in Norway. But they think that this is the future and that we're going to be seeing more and more cargo ships that are autonomous. Now, we've also talked about how steamship lines are building new vessels. And so I wonder whether they're looking at this technology when they're building their new vessels or not. Jim, what did you think about this? Because I thought this is kind of crazy. I mean, we're going to see boats out there with very minimal crew.
Yeah, the whole autonomous conversation has been going on for what, a decade now. Amazon's got drones that are going to come to us at some point. Autonomous trucks. So you talk about transportation logistics. I mean, what I love about this is trying to move as much of this off the roadways onto the seas.
Yes.
Right? There's some great opportunity there for us. I think, in reading this article, it's going to start really small, city to city within a country like in Norway, but getting cross-oceanic and all of that, I think we're a long ways away. But that you're showing right there, that's the whole autonomous part of the ship, right? The whole data control center sits right in that pod that's on the ship. So few humans load. And the option is, or the hope is that you build a whole bunch of autonomous cranes and unloaders and things to move those containers, off the ship without humans. So pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And they're saying that they're going to be monitored from 3 onshore centers, which is crazy. So if you think about drones, right? Are they going to be sitting there with little remote controls and turn right, turn left? Okay, probably not. But anyways, that's kind of how I was picturing it. But going back to your comment about the roads, they can carry 103 containers, which replaces 40,000 trucks a year. So from an emissions perspective, I mean, obviously this is a total game changer. But where we're going to run into issues is obviously on international waters and what that's going to look like and who's going to be liable. And there's going to be rules and regulations for different bodies of water when you get closer to different countries. And so I think there's a lot of barriers that we need to get through. But I think we're on a good trajectory looking at Norway to test this out this year and have it start moving and proving what we can possibly see in the future. So I just want to say one more thing before we go. We had Source Day on the podcast. It's episode 217. So if you want to learn more about Source Day, please go and check that out at letstalksupplychain.com or wherever you subscribe to the podcast, because I talked to Tom all about what they are doing and how they are doing some amazing things in the industry. Jim, it was amazing to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. And everybody in the audience, thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday. Audrey will be back with me next week. And so I hope you guys all have an amazing week ahead.
Thanks, Sarah.